And in those discussions, most of those people fail to distinguish between the two types of plans. Makes all the difference in the world. ERISA has a statute of limitations. And I've given you the citation, 29 U.S.C. 1113A1 says 6 years. When, not that you're given notice, no notice. We're not going to tell you what we contributed into your plan. We're not going to tell you whether it was right or wrong or anything like that. No notice. You still must sue us in 6 years to get the right amount deposited. Therefore, you have an obligation to check. Well, you don't have that problem because you get your annual statements. Okay? So the second provision has a 3-year statute of limitations that you could sue your employer for 3 years if they put the wrong amount in your account, for example. When the plaintiff had actual knowledge of the breach or violation. How do you have actual knowledge? You got the statement. Statement told you what they put in. You have the right to compare it against what they should have put in. By the way, you have some duty to do that. And if you fail to do that, too bad for you. Employees get annual statements. Fraud, by the way, is a different matter. And you can sue your employer 6 years after you discover the fraud. We're assuming with all the safeguards in today, fraud isn't going on. It could be, but that's not normally the case. Mistakes are sometimes made. Wrong amount goes into the wrong account. Skip. Forgot to mention something. I didn't make it into a slide. You may or may not know this, but for Social Security purposes, the statute of limitation is 3 years. So your employer takes money out of your paycheck, pays it into the Social Security system. There's withholding. There's an amount of what your salary was for Social Security computation and things like that goes on. If they report that your salary was 0 for 2015 to Social Security, you have 3 years to get that corrected. And the burden and duty is on you. Many people now are requesting annual Social Security statements from the Social Security Administration. Just go online and make the request. You'll get it every year. I have a blank in 1988. And I can't correct it because I didn't know what the rule was. Luckily, I've worked enough beyond that it's not going to affect my Social Security. But I suggest to all of you, you need to do that. So that is another area where there's a statute of limitations, where you have a duty really to act to protect yourself. Okay, so let's move on. So what's the ERISA record-keeping recommendation here? There's a number of reasons that lead to these retention periods, but one is 6 years. You will see that 6-year statute of limitation if you were not given notice. Or let's say it was faulty notice. But let's say you didn't have notice. It would be good if you had the records at least 6 years of how much you contributed into somebody's account. The other place is the Pension Guarantee Board has an absolute 6-year requirement that you do need to follow. So that's where we get 6 from. And it conforms to the longest statute of limitation. Reports to the federal government, your annual reporting on your pension plan, same 6 years, show you did everything the way it was supposed to be done. The plan, this gets to the different form of retention, as it says in ERISA, must be kept while the plan is active plus 6 years. So what does it mean for a pension plan to be active? It means that somebody is entitled to benefits under that plan. So if all employees have either died off or exhausted all benefits, that plan could be terminated, then the 6 years kicks in. So the plan can go on for many years. An old plan could be in effect while a new plan is adopted. The new plan may not replace the old plan. So you need to kind of look at that. There was one thing I forgot on the slide, and I apologize for that, and I noted it on the airplane flying into San Diego. We also make one more general recommendation in this area, and that is that you keep summary information on employment, not detailed, summary, while the employee is active plus 6 years. So that would be a basis for years of service, levels of salary, promotion dates, or things like that, just the events that took place, not all the paperwork and detail and approvals and stuff like that. I refer to that as summary information. That becomes extremely important for some people for the defined benefit plans. I'm telling you it's unimportant for the defined contribution plans. Defined contribution plans with the ERISA statute of limitation, after 6 years, if an employee got the wrong amount, contributed into their account under your 401k or other type of program, too bad for the employee. The employer has no duty, no interest in going back further in that and having records. Yet I find companies doing that all the time. And I beg them, don't do this. And they keep saying, oh, what if we made a mistake? We don't want to disadvantage our employees. I said, well, then you do so and create this huge burden for your company out of the goodness of your heart. Tell that to your shareholders, that you're incurring this expense out of the goodness of your heart. You're going to do the right thing. You're going to have good programs. Your employees are given notice. Employees have a duty to verify the information is correct. What else do you want? I have this argument all the time with HR people. Then we get into the problem of the defined benefit plans, the old style. They say we have to recompute years of service and this. Well, if you have the summary records, you could do it real quickly. I say, and I find I have an awful difficult time convincing them of this. As of 6 years ago, you have documented years of service, salary levels, etc. Why do you have to go further back than that? Then another year goes by and you have a document that's 6 years old again, that documents years of service and predicts what the benefits will be in future years, etc. Why do you have to recompute it when the employee terminates? ERISA does say you have to have records to demonstrate that benefits have been paid correctly under your program. I have just suggested a record-keeping plan that demonstrates that benefits are being calculated correctly and therefore will be paid out correctly. But that's not the way the HR world wants to look at it. I give you this information to start challenging them. Here are, and I can't give you every citation in this type of presentation, but everything is supported by the legal research, by the appropriate citations. And if there's something that's missing that you need, please let me know. Okay? And act, by the way, in this case as well, the plan is still in effect. Just want to take then the last part of today's session very, very quickly, and then I'll open it up for questions, on the Uniform Electronic Transaction Act. See, I won't get to federal preemption. UETA was adopted in 1999 and adopted now in the United States by 47 states. Federal government has not adopted UETA, Uniform Electronic Transaction Act. Instead, the United States federal government, actually before the uniform law even came out for consideration by the states, adopted a law called e-sign, electronic signatures and global networks. The U.S. federal government adopted it in 1999. The governments of the world developed e-sign to permit and promote electronic commerce between countries. So they wanted to say that if we do an electronic contract between the United States and France, it would be valid. But the United States version of this says that if a state adopts UETA and UETA conflicts with e-sign, and this is the opposite of federal preemption, they say the state law will prevail. UETA will prevail if it conflicts with e-sign, even though UETA is a state provision. E-sign is a federal provision. Okay? It basically says electronic records are valid as paper records. And very quickly, if you have electronic records and electronic signatures, they have the full effect of the law. Doesn't mean paper records are bad. Doesn't mean electronic records are better. They're just valid if they're electronic. You can't discriminate against the record because it is electronic, as some courts in the past have tried to do. The maintenance of electronic records constitutes legal compliance when you have a requirement to keep records. Please reconsider your thinking process when you read a law and the law requires you to keep a record. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands in the United States, and Canada's doing a real good job in coming up with their tens of thousands. That when the law says you shall keep records, there is no requirement that it be in paper. Most of you start with the premise the paper comes first and then the electronic comes second, therefore the paper is better. Paper is neither better nor worse, it just is. Okay? I can give you many, many examples why the electronic records can be better. If for no other reason, we can fully back them up at little or no cost on a regular basis. In the paper world, it's very expensive to scan them all, microfilm them all, index, keep 2 sets of records. You don't want to do that. Okay, and the exchange of email may constitute a written contract without signatures. I keep warning organizations about this. I send you an email, will you paint my fence blue? You respond, yes, I will paint it green for $25. I respond and say, okay, no signatures, we have written contracts. Email exchange has developed a new type of written contract, an exchange of emails, and UETA recognizes that. Okay, and requirements to keep records are satisfied the retention of electronic records, retention of electronic images are electronic records, just as good as paper. By the way, there are numerous other laws we can look at too. Uniform Photographic Copies of Business, Public Records Evidence Act. For evidence purposes, the Uniform Rules of Evidence, or the Federal Rules of Evidence, support reproductions, allow reproductions to be admitted to the same extent as the original. Okay? So we just went through 4 laws with some of the background, etc. What I hope you take out of this is to be open to rereading some of these provisions. Don't just take somebody's word for it that it means this in the record-keeping area, because in most cases, the attorneys mean well, but they don't have your experience in records and information management. And therefore, they often make a decision that there's some risk here, so let's be ultra-conservative. Your job is to point out if we are ultra-conservative and we keep all our records forever, what is the risk of doing that? And that's an important counter-argument. We're just about at the end of today's session. Very important for you to fill out your questionnaires. Please give it to the gentleman over here as you exit. And since our session is over, I won't keep everybody, but I'll be happy to stay and answer questions. Thank you all very much.